attempt to eat something, it gets eaten itself because it's hooked. And Satan has hooks, but his hooks aren't obvious. He hides the hooks. Did you hear what I just said? Everybody, listen to me. Everybody that needs to experience freedom, 9 times out of 10, got in bondage, not because they said yes to bondage. They didn't say yes to a hook. They said yes to a worm. When it's unaddressed, it's a dream killer. How is unaddressed offense a dream killer? Make that make sense to me. Here it is. Unaddressed offense causes us to obsess about our enemies and not our assignment. Did you hear what I just said? I said unaddressed offense is a dream killer because it causes us to obsess with our enemies and not our assignment. So the fuel for someone's future is a motivation to punish others or to prove to others that they can do something that somebody else said they couldn't do.
Yes. Yes.
So instead of living a life that's chasing purpose, they're living a life trying to prove something. Prove something or punish someone, because unaddressed offense is a dream killer. And there are too many people that are not walking in their purpose because they're too busy trying to prove to others that they're worthy of it.
Say that again.
Some people, here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing about offense. Can I just work this for a minute, okay? Here's the thing about offense. John Bevere calls offense the bait of Satan. The bait of Satan. And I don't know how much you know about fishing, but there are times when people fish, they use bait. And so we used to use worms, and you would put the worm on the hook, and you would throw the hook in the water, right? And you would simulate, watch this, with the rod, you would simulate the moving of a worm, which would cause a fish to think the worm's alive. And in an attempt for the fish to actually get the worm, the fish gets hooked. And so in an attempt to kill one thing, come on, in an attempt to eat something, it gets eaten itself because it's hooked. And Satan has hooks, but his hooks aren't obvious. He hides the hooks. Did you hear what I just said? Everybody, listen to me. Everybody that needs to experience freedom, 9 times out of 10, got in bondage, not because they said yes to bondage. They didn't say yes to a hook. They said yes to a worm. Y'all not talking to me. They said they said yes to a night. They said yes to a relationship. They said yes to an experiment. They said yes, and they didn't realize that Satan has his hook. Good God Almighty. And this is why we need to talk about this a little bit more. This is why you cannot afford to live your life absent of not the spiritual gift, but the skill of discernment, which is the wisdom to recognize a pattern. I'm not talking about the spiritual gift of discerning of spirits. I'm talking about the skill to recognize a pattern. To say every time this happened, I need to stop. To recognize a pattern, discernment, that this could potentially lead to that. Because Satan hides his hooks. And one of the places he hides his hooks is offense. Can I park here for a minute now? I said we just reflecting today, right? Okay. When I say offense, some people think anger. Okay. And that's why they assume this message is not for them. Wow. But you can be offended and not be mad. Facts. Did you hear what I just said? Like, have you ever stopped fooling with somebody and you wasn't even mad about it?
Yes.
But something happened, right, to cause you to make a shift in that relationship. It just means you weren't emotionally invested enough for it to impact you in a way where it evoked anger. It was like when I lost them, I didn't really lose much because every loss is not a loss. Some of you need to hear what I just, somebody put that in the chat for me. Every loss is not a loss. Some of you are calling stuff a loss in this season. You're going to be calling it a blessing in another season. See, I got that revelation a long time ago. I say this in relation to others. Everybody in your life is equally valuable. A Wall Street, off the street, equally valuable. But everybody don't add equal value to you. Every loss, but sometimes a loss happens and you're like, I wasn't really emotionally invested in this. So the emotional ramifications aren't that deep. But you still were offended. You just weren't angry. Because offense is love's response to injustice. Yeah. So when a person says to me, I'm unoffendable, I will say to them, you are unloving. Because love requires vulnerability. Love, when you choose to love, you choose to be vulnerable. When you choose the pleasure of love, you also choose the possibility of pain. Did you hear what I just said? I said, when you choose the pleasure of love, you also choose the possibility of pain because the pleasure of love requires vulnerability. It requires you extending yourself emotionally to a person in a way that you would not extraordinarily extend yourself to, which means you are giving to them the power to impact you emotionally. When you give love, you also are giving away power. Are y'all here? This this is seen in the life and in the ministry of Jesus. God so loved the world that he gave.
Yes.
And Jesus's love for us caused him to allow himself to be placed in a vulnerable position on the cross. Because it was not nails that kept him there, it was love. So when someone says, I'm unoffendable, I'm saying you're unlovable or unloving. Because offense is love's response to injustice. When I've invested in you and treated you right and love you well, and watch this, there isn't a reciprocation, not in practice, but in principle. See, when there's reciprocation, it's not practice. It means that they don't have to do the same thing for you. You do for them. But in principle, if I'm making a 5-talent investment, I want a 5-talent return.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You understand what I'm saying? So when you treat people right, come on now. When you treat people right, and when you could kill them, but like metaphorically, but let them live. And then they leave and they go out talking and killing you.
Right.
Even if you don't want the relationship, you feel like I've been handled unjustly.
Yeah.
Or I've invested. Let me pause and let me talk. Let me see if some people in the chat will be honest enough to admit that you feel something when you don't feel reciprocation.
Facts.
You may not say anything, but you feel it. Husband, you feel it. Wife, you feel it. Friend, you feel. At some point, you stop and you say, now I come to all they stuff. I come to all they stuff. They never come to mine. And this is what happens. That offense can become a hook, because depending on where a fish is hooked, that determines what a fish feels.
Eat right there. Eat right there.
Yeah. Some fish, they're hooked and they don't even know they're hooked. They just feel themselves being pulled, because depending on where the hook lands, that determines whether or not they'll feel pain. And some of you are being pulled and you don't know it because you don't feel pain. You don't know you are being pulled in trying to prove you can do it without them. You don't even know that's what's pulling you, because you don't feel the pain. You don't know. You don't know that you're being pulled by trying to make him or her regret that they ever left you. You don't know you're being pulled by that. Y'all aren't talking to me. You don't. Because depending on where the fish is hooked, that determines what the fish feels. And so many of us are being pulled and we don't know it because we don't feel pain. You can't give your life to something or to someone and be faithful and committed and generous and vulnerable, and they disregard your feelings. They have no sense of empathy for what's happening for you on the inside, and you not be impacted in some way. But pride makes it difficult to perceive you've been hooked. So we hooked with our eyes closed, assuming that our ignoring of it dismisses the existence of it. And some people are not experiencing or accomplishing their dreams because they've been hooked by unaddressed offense.